Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Zero Hour. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is the portion of the program in which we do readings and talk about them a little bit. And this week's reading is from American history. It is the author and historian Joseph J. Ellis. He won the Pulitzer Prize for a book called Founding Brothers, but this book is called After the Revolution, Profiles of Early American Culture. It's really interesting. I really enjoy this book, but I wanted to read you a particular part of this book, a particular moment in American history that I found striking. He's got a chapter on Noah Webster, you know, the dictionary guy, the guy whose Webster's dictionary was the first American dictionary, and really, at one point, I think, in American history, in virtually every American home. So, but Webster fell on hard times at one point in his career. I think the timing was about the year 1790, so quite a while ago. By July of 1793, so there's your answer, Webster was $1,815 in debt, which for the currency of the time was an astronomical amount, and was on the verge of selling his law library for $300 in cash. Then, quite unexpectedly, came an offer that promised to rescue him from debt and to thrust him into the very center of national affairs. Alexander Hamilton and Rufus King offered a loan of $1,500. I feel a little bit like Dr. Evil here reading that. $1 million. Offered a loan of $1,500 if Webster would move to New York and initiate publication of a newspaper that would support the policies of the Washington administration. Okay, so pause here for a second to say, so Noah Webster was being offered money to create a newspaper that would support the establishment, the brand new political establishment of a brand new country. I'll continue reading. Although there was very little chance that Webster would pass up this opportunity, he nonetheless dickered. In other words, he wanted more money. On November 13th, 1793, he arrived in New York City with his family. Less than a month later, the first issue of the American Minerva appeared. In addition to several advertisements for his textbooks and readers, the first issue of Minerva carried Webster's declaration of editorial independence. He claimed that his newspaper would, quote, be chaste and impartial. It will avoid purely personal attacks and will support the administration, end quote. And reading for the moment. So what do we got here? We've got a guy starting what might be considered the first major American media outlet, doing so with donor money, political money, and asserting a set of values that might be indistinguishable from any major newspaper outlet of the time, except the more overtly right-wing ones, which is to support as I said, the establishment of the time, to be impartial. Now, bearing in mind that right here, what Webster's doing is contradicting himself. He's saying he'll be impartial, then he's saying he will support the administration. Well, you can't do both. But see, that's my whole point. My point is that the media today claims to be impartial, yet it has a bias, not a Democratic or a Republican bias, but an establishment bias. So it's not really impartial when it dismisses Donald Trump's claim that he would, for example, pull out of Syria as being lunatic talk, or his assertions that trade deals are bad for American workers, which they are, is crazy talk. It's not being Democratic or Republican, it's defending the establishment. When it then turns around and mocks Bernie Sanders for proposing Medicare for all, it's defending the establishment, that bipartisan establishment. Now, granted, that establishment is virtually out of Republican politics now. They're all right-wing extremists, but whenever Trump says something that's not nuts, that's when they attack him. Not for all the nuts stuff, but for the one thing that's not nuts, because they are being chaste and impartial and supporting the establishment. Now, that's why they're dismissing the left and the ideas of the left for the very same reason. Now, to be fair, there was pretty harsh equivalent of social media back then, too, as the book goes on to say. Webster found himself described as, quote, a pusillanimous, half-begotten, self-dubbed patriot, quote, an incurable lunatic, quote, a deceitful newsmonger, a pedagogue, and a quack. A historian dubbed the 1790s and, quote unquote, age of passion. So there we have it. Very, very similar today. Another historian observed that, quote, the political battles of the 790s were grounded upon a complete distrust of one's political opponents. So we're seeing a return to this episode of history, but we do not need media to be mouthpieces for the establishment.